Jenni, and welcome to Bite-Sized Conversations with Kylie and Jenni.
Hello.
Hi there. I'm excited about our topic of the day, which is how do you show up in places where you don't want to be? So, Jenni, how have things been for you this week, showing up in places you don't want to be? Has there been any of that in your world?
Actually, this week, not really. I think I've had a really good week. It's been a busy week with lockdown here in Brizzy, so having to reorganise meetings and instead of having a beautiful coffee catch up at my local cafe with one of my stakeholders, I had to do it on Zoom, which is never a nice way to meet people. But it's funny how you just we're all adjusting to being on Zoom or Teams and having great conversations, just like we're in the same room now.
Yeah, that's so true. How do you feel people are coping up there in Brisbane for this lockdown?
I think there's a little bit of cabin fever happening. I think we've been trying to do the right thing throughout the whole COVID process. And, you know, when you can fire a cannonball down the street at the moment because the streets are so empty because people are, you know, following the rules for the most part. But I think there's frustration when you see other states and people in other states not following, and that's the result how we are where we are. So I think there's a little bit of cabin fever happening. There's a little bit of frustration of, you know, I think it's the unknowing and the uncertainty about it's, you know, it might be 3 days, then it might be another week, and we're not sure if it's going to be another week or another 2 weeks. And to some extent, I feel like it would be better if everyone just said, hey, it's going to be a month at home. There's the number. It's a month at home, work it out. Because then we could, you know, we have certainty around that. But this whole kind of every 3 days reassessing, I think, creates some challenges for people. And I mean, and even down your way is becoming even, you know, the bubble is becoming less of a bubble these days.
Yeah, we've been in isolation for a few weeks, but by choice, not because it's happening. But I'll tell you something that just gave my heart a hug last night.
Yeah.
I was watching a little news on YouTube. I'm not sure what channel it was, but or what network it was, but it was all about the beautiful things that are happening in Brisbane to help people out. So there was a caterer that is just doing, I can't think, it was like maybe 100 meals a day or something, and you can donate $5 a meal if you want to, or you can just come and pick them up and they're free. Awesome. And then there was a grocery supplier that was making up these care packs and sending them out to people in the areas worst affected where they can't get online deliveries.
That's awesome.
So beautiful. It's like, yes, I love it when those things start up, you know, almost straight away, and people looking at ways to help. It's beautiful. It was a very special moment.
That's really awesome. I know. I think I do think though, one thing that this whole process has done for us though is it's making us kind of recognize what community really is, and I think. You know, we before we kind of just do our own thing and you stay in your own space, and I mean you've got already you're spread so thin across with Bangalore and all the different charities and around Northern Rivers that you do, but for a lot of people who don't have that community, who just go to work, do their family, do their thing, they don't think about the absence or the connection that they have with people. And I know with my gym, I train with my gym every morning, and that's my kind of, I do that for mental health and for kind of fitness and everything else. But not being able to go and do that kind of 5 a.m. catch up with everybody, even though I thought, do I really, you know, is it about the community? And I'm realizing now, particularly this week, because it's become such a habit for me, not turning up and spending, you know, an hour with 5, 10 or 20 other people is huge. Like, it's a massive impact to go, wow, community is actually really important. And I think that's the best thing that this is doing. It's making us recognize that, you know, we can't live and do our things on our own. We need connection, and so finding cool ways to be connected, I think, is really important in this time.
Totally. And last year at the beginning, of very beginning of COVID, when we all first went into lockdown, I was doing some courses for the local community college that were free for anyone to attend, and it was literally how to use Zoom. So all they had to do was actually get on, and then after that I would teach them, you know, how you can change where your stuff's positioned, how you can be, and then they would come with questions such as, I'm a minister in my local church, and how can I, reach people because they can no longer come to church and things like that. It was just amazing.
So good.
You and I work in this space all the time, but realizing for some people, barely probably even turn on a computer. So, trying to think what's ways that they can connect and what's ways that they can reach people who are not actually, predominantly in that way.
Ooh. I've got a client that I'm working with at the moment, and we're supposed to be running a beautiful big workshop around developing a program. And so we've got people from, central Queensland who are not locked down versus the guys here in southeast Queensland who are locked down. So we can't travel. They could travel here, but then they're in lockdown. Then they have to go into kind of isolation when they go home. So it's not tenable. And so we've been playing around with using Microsoft Teams and the whiteboard that in the same way you can have Zoom has its whiteboard or its screen. In the Teams model, it actually can collaborate. Everybody on the call can collaborate in the whiteboard, kind of like a Stormboard or another type of activity where you can all put Post-it notes, you can all write, and we can actually collaborate and create almost a whiteboard traditional Post-it note facilitation workshop using Teams. So what's cool is that we're trying to find ways now to use the technology to leverage that connection. So we're not all taking our own notes, that we can actually, here's my Post-it note, here's my thought bubble, here's my thing. And so what's great about this is where and I haven't used that before. I've used it for myself as taking notes, but I haven't used it in a facilitated workshop before. And I'm actually really excited about using some cool technology to help us maintain that connection and find new ways to kind of grow in this time.
That's so fun. I never thought about that, of being able to all contribute to the whiteboard together. I love it.
And because you only get it as you can only download it as a PNG. But if you think about it, like, on a traditional whiteboard or flip chart paper, that you have to transcribe it later anyway. So you have that as a record of the conversation, and you can take notes. And I think they're the things that we need to, when we don't want to show up on Teams every day, they talk about places that we don't want to be. After this, I've came out of an 8-hour workshop yesterday. I'm back in after this into an 8-hour workshop where my colleagues are in Rockhampton and I'm here in Brizzy. You don't want to do that via Teams, but it does facilitate an opportunity to still feel connected when you can't physically be there.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think it's a really, really wonderful thing that people are now able to embrace it. And
the fact that you're teaching people how to use the Zoom, which you said we just know because we've had to work it out to be able to run our business, but we forget. I forget that people just haven't used it. And that's still the case. So what about you? What are the places that you don't like hanging out that you don't want to be and having to show up?
Well, one of them is LinkedIn, for example. So LinkedIn, I know, is a really important platform. I know that it is powerful in many, many ways. I also think that I come with baggage of negativity around it, because in those early days, I really didn't like. I'll tell you what's it's even now. One of the things I just don't like about it is that I could have never met you, Jenni, and yet we've somehow connected on LinkedIn, which is fine. But then I can write you a recommendation and say that you got to tick all these boxes, and it gives me suggestions like, are you an amazing business consultant? Are you amazing at working with corporates and with entrepreneurs? And I'll go tick, 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 tick. I actually know nothing about you and your business. And I don't like that. And so in those early days, I was getting recommendations from people, and that was clearly they do for me and then I would do for them. But I don't like that game. It's like, no. But don't recommend me for something if you actually literally don't even know that about me. So that didn't feel very authentic to me, and that really put me off from the beginning. But the other thing is that I find it quite a clunky platform, and I find that, they introduced the business side of it a lot later. So the personal was the business, and I don't know, there's just something about it that I don't love. But I know I need to be there. So I try and be there at least once a week, minimum, and just hang out a little bit more in there. But I think the reality is, if it's a place that just doesn't feel right for you, it's tricky. It's tricky actually going, I'll make myself do it. That said, I really enjoy being in Facebook groups. So, and whether that's my personal groups or my business groups or whatever, I just love the learning and all that can go on. And it just feels a whole lot more authentic as opposed to like LinkedIn. What about for you? What's an example of one you love and one you don't, but that you still show up in?
Yeah, I love it. These days I I was a late adopter to Instagram, but I love Instagram. I'm not a scroller on any of the platforms, although there are people that I follow that I like to see and I watch particularly. But I love Instagram because I love the fact that it allows people, and for me particularly, I can showcase my brand in the fullness of my brand in a nice curated platform. And maybe it's my kind of structured need for like how things look that I love about it. I also love the bite-sized nature and the fact that you can either do really long form posts, which a lot more people are doing, although some of them are getting a little bit too long on LinkedIn, on Instagram. But it's often just a bite-sized thing. And you and I are looking this morning at a couple of people, just a really cool quote and really quirky. So I love Instagram. LinkedIn I like. I like LinkedIn because it allows me to present thought bubbles. So I think of LinkedIn as a business thought bubble platform. So if I have something to do with business that I want people to think about or I want them to connect to me with, I use it as a thought bubble and so it's like a mini blog. So I think of LinkedIn as a mini blog, whereas Facebook and Instagram is a little bit more fun and a little bit more, you can play around a little bit more, particularly in groups. I'm not a fan of Twitter because so I know Twitter for a lot of people is massive, but the idea of spending my whole time on Twitter doing these kind of short bursts of kind of continuous conversation and that kind of blow by blow discussion of what's happening in your world, to me, I just find like I can't even understand why you'd want to do it. Like I look at Twitter and go, I know it's great, and there are some people who thrive on Twitter, and it's great for those that short news cycles. And I've been in workshops where they've had like Twitter chats going, or tweets going. There you go. Can't even use the language, right? And it's great because like, oh, I love that quote that she said about this, and I love that. I'm like, but it's so quick and so fast. I don't have time to go back and look at conversations, and it's so fleeting. And does anyone actually really care what your thought bubble is right this second? Does it matter that I need to know what's happening every 5 seconds? And so for me, I struggle on Twitter.
I love it so much, and I totally agree with you. I really do. Plus, it can be just so political, and I'm like, oh. But let me tell you something amazing that a friend just said to me on Sunday when I caught up with her about Twitter. So she works in a very influential role. I'm just trying to think of the right way of putting it, in health, to do with COVID and the rolling out of ways to protect us, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, we were talking about that, and I said, and one friend was saying, I don't even look at the news. I don't read anything. I just don't want to know, it's too much. Another friend was like, well, another friend said, I watch at 11 a.m. every single day on the ABC. As soon as there's new things to share, I want to know about it. So we're all at these different stages of what we want to absorb, etc. I'm like, well, at night, I don't, because I can't get regular free-to-air TV. So I'll jump on YouTube and I'll watch whatever's latest that's just popped up or something. Yeah. So whether it's COVID related, whatever, it's just some latest news, but literally 5 minutes at most. So we're definitely all absorbing it in different ways. And and then we all looked at her because she's clearly the one, in a whole different, whatever to what we are. And she said, actually, I'm a Twitterer or a reader of Twitter, and that's where I get it all from. And she said, when you think of it like this, if you follow every country's main news source, to do with COVID, or every country that you really want to know about with what's happening, and particularly, Australia, etc. You get to see all these different viewpoints and all these different ways that they're presenting it. So you get an incredibly well-rounded view. And she said, think of it like a triangle. So I'm getting the extreme left, the extreme right, and then what's happening over here, and it's all coming around. But she said also they all share each other's stuff. So you get to see a really great overview. She said, compare that to Facebook, which is just completely polarized, and everybody's either this side or this side, and it's intense, whichever way you look at it. Yeah. Twitter, it's just with these news channels, it's not like that at all.
I love that idea. Maybe I'll spend the next couple of days, we're in lockdown anyway, having a look at Twitter as my news source, because I hate looking at news online because of the fact that you are getting a singular view, and it's, and they are so skewed, it depends on who you are, and what you're looking at is whether it's a positive, even this morning having a conversation I struggle listening to any of the news services, and I don't tend to watch a lot of news because of it, because you're getting, and just the use of language of like saying, At one point it might be, it's really great. We only got, someone have a positive spin on the fact there was only 16 cases overnight. And then someone else talks about it like it's, the world is ending for 16 cases and they're taking small bite-sized bits of information rather than showing the whole picture. And it drives me mad, but I love that idea about Twitter basically giving you the opportunity to see the whole picture because you're only getting the bite size each time.
Yeah. And the
Very
sharing
cool.
doing of each other. I thought that was fascinating. So yeah, jump on there and form your own triangle of news. And
so I have a question for you. In the old days, because we still have a lot of people who do it, networking events.
Yeah.
So people think I'm an extrovert, and I'm kind of a little bit extroverted, but I call myself a highly functioning introvert because I love having people and I love connections, but I like it on my own terms. I like to be able to show up when I want to show up and, skulk away when I want to. So it's very much about making, and I need a lot of time to recharge. I like my evenings. I like my time, my downtime, so I can recharge. And so when I go to a networking event, I find that whole kind of need to be on for 45 minutes or 3 hours, depending on what the event is to be so exhausting. And you kind of want to find that one or two people that you love and like, they're my people for the whole evening. I've networked, I found 2 people. Yes. So how do you find, because I know a lot of people that I talk to still struggle with networking events. That kind of walking into the room, you don't know anybody. Do you have a name tag on? Do you not have a name tag on? Do you take business cards? Do you not take business cards? Like how do you find those?
Yeah, that's such a good thing, especially around the idea of how do you show up when you don't want to, because I never had thought about going to a networking event in my life. It hadn't crossed my mind. And then about 12 years ago, I was invited to be a speaker at our local women's networking event. And so never having been to one, I was like, well, that'd be interesting. They'll clearly want a demonstration of my products. So I rock up ready to do a demonstration and they're like, well, that was great. Thank you. Now tell us all about you. So I was like, oh, okay then. So it was really fascinating. Like clearly I hadn't done my homework, had I? And about what these were even about. Anyway, it was amazing. And then so many people connected with me and wanted to buy my products. So that was cool. But then they were just like, it's incredible what you do. And what's fascinating is that they said what I hadn't really thought about before is that what was incredible is the story behind why I did what I did and how I actually managed to do it with all the other things that were going on behind my stuff. So that was a really good eye opener to me in terms of, okay, so it's not just about what you do, it's why you do it. Your why, your how, and all those kinds of things. And that's what people are fascinated about. So yes, they were fascinated about the products, but they were way more fascinated with the story behind the products. So, but, fast forward, I then joined the committee, of course, and then evolved it and, then did my own thing with the, meetup group, etc. So you'll notice that I call it a meetup group and not a networking group, because for starters, I think the word networking kind of makes me cringe the same way the word sales does. It's kind of like, immediately I think there's expectations on me for turning up or for the people turning up, etc. Also, I just want it to be a friendly group. And I'm exactly like you. I'll find 1 or 2 people that I like, have a chat with, and I'm like, yes, I've won. That's great. But when I was on the committee for this in-person networking group, it was actually a really good thing for me because I had to do what I didn't like, which was to go around each person at the beginning when everyone's mingling. So I wasn't on the door. We had, people so we had a lot of volunteers, but at least 7 at a time in our group.
Wow.
And it was brilliant because, people could do the jobs that they were comfortable with. But from time to time, I would get put on the MC role, which I never liked doing, but I got better and better and better at that. So that was good. And then sometimes I got put on the role where I'd have to go around and particularly for people that we knew and, introduce myself and then introduce them to someone else, which was super awesome because what I found, and I've been to a lot of networking events since then of many different types, is that when you rock up and nobody does that for you, how awkward is that? Wouldn't you rather just leave? It's like, I don't come here to be a wallflower and sit in the corner. And you're all so cliquey that I don't know how to fit in with all of this and I don't like it. So I'm very, very conscious of doing what I like is what I want to do for others.
Yeah.
What makes me comfortable. So it's a funny thing about showing up and how you show up. And, I think as soon as we can take away the word networking, it feels like we're actually there to make connections.
Yeah, I love that change, and I completely agree with you, and I think that's probably why you and I connected so easily on the first time we connected, is because we had similar values and we had the similar intention around what we wanted to be there for. But I love that piece about it's the why, and I think that's when we talk about how do you do something when you don't want to be there, no matter what it is, how you show up somewhere because you have to, or how do you do a task when you you don't want to do it but you have to, how do you do homework when you don't want to have to, right? All those things, it comes down to that why, isn't it? Understanding what's the reason I'm here, and really connecting with, well, I know if I turn up and I have a conversation, or I know if I turn up and share my story, it's going to make an impact, or it's going to help people understand what I do, or it's going to help people understand what this whole thing is about. So I think that I love that connection of saying, if I know why I'm doing it and why I'm turning up, you can get past the slight uncomfortability or the slight awkwardness about not being there. And that's the same with social media, isn't it? I mean, when you and I met, two years ago, I hated social media. I used social media. I was, barely on it, because for me, it was back in the day when people were using it purely to post their sandwiches every day, or what they were drinking at lunch, or, what at the moment, lots of people, I don't know, focus on their food prep. And like, that's awesome for you. That's brilliant. Love that. That's what makes you happy. But for me, I've struggled with connecting with it. But now I understand it's a really important way, that particularly in these times, that for me to be able to connect with people. And so knowing where the people I want to hang out, knowing the platforms I want to hang out with and invite people to come and find me there, helps me actually feel okay. And I actually enjoy my 30 minutes a day that I spend. I limit my time on it because I don't want to go down that kind of the vortex of social media vortex where you can spend hours looking through stuff. And so for me, it's that connection with, I understand the value, what it's giving me, and therefore I can, go through the motions that I need to.
That's so good. And it's so true. Why am I on social media? What's my why about being here? And not even about what you post, about what you're spending your time. What's your intention of what are you looking at? I had a terrible scenario last night where I went down a rabbit hole, and because I was just caught this little video, and next thing I'm watching this whole family's lives on their video posts, and probably an hour had passed. It was really late and I couldn't sleep, and then I was annoyed with myself. I was like, Kylie, why do you even care? And I got very invested.
Isn't that like Gogglebox was invented?
I got so invested in it. It was very, very annoying when I realized the time that had passed.
That is awesome. Michael and I were sitting somewhere, I don't know where we were. We were somewhere recent. We were hanging out. It was Michael and I, and there were some other people around us. And Michael and I were we were in the airport. That's right. We were at the airport having this kind of random conversation when I could fly 3 weeks ago. We came back from Cairns. And so we're having just this kind of banter conversation about something just completely, ridiculous. And the woman next to us just started laughing and had to make a comment. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, we disturbed you. She's like, no, this is the best conversation I've had all day. It's because she's just enjoying the fact that we were having this kind of little banter, and it wasn't loud, but she was just sitting so close to us that she could hear everything. And she was just sitting there on her phone laughing, thinking this was the best piece of entertainment she'd had all day, because, we'd made her day whilst we were waiting for, an hour wait for the plane at the airport. But it's funny how, like, for us, we just, you have that choice, don't you, to decide, where you want to be and how you want to approach the task. And I think that's what we're talking about, isn't it? If you need to show up somewhere, do it authentically. If you don't want to be there, admit that, own that, be okay with the fact that this is not where I want to be, but how can I make the most out of it today? How can I flip this and look at it from a different way that actually I can see the benefit that I'm getting out of it while I'm being here.
It's so true. And, I'm going to give my top tip of the day about how to show up where you don't want to be, but you need to be there. And then I'll come back to LinkedIn, which I just really was so negative about. But I realized that it could be helpful to people listening, is that I don't like LinkedIn on a desktop. I find it's messy. I find I get distracted and I just don't like it. Yep. But LinkedIn on your phone is actually so much more basic and simple.
Yeah, it is.
You're not distracted by all the extra palaver going on. And it's more of just a friendly news feed. So that's my top tip, is actually when you've got to do something, find a version of it that's a little more manageable.
I love that. Actually, I've just had that. I just had that conversation, not about social media, but Airtable. You know how much we love Airtable. I love Airtable on a desktop, but I've got a client who doesn't like his desktop and lives on his mobile phone. So we've actually got him set up, and he's using Airtable now on a regular basis because it's on his phone, and he finds it so much easier to add his images and do what he needs to do for his project, because we're using it for project mapping rather than for social media. And so he finds that he's now wanting to actually engage and do his action lists and do his priority list, because he can carry it with him, and he knows, he can interact on it so much better. So I love that tip. Find a platform or find a way that you can interact it that works for you. That is the best tip.
Yeah, and I say the same thing to people about Pinterest, because everybody should be using Pinterest.
Okay, we need to have a conversation about Pinterest. I think.
That should be our next week. Could be Pinterest and why it's so important for business.
Maybe we'll do like a little bite-sized masterclass on Pinterest.
But not even, what I like to talk about is not even thinking of it as a social media channel for your own business. Like, not at all. Use it for research. Use it as a search engine. It's just amazing. And
mine will just be shoes.
Yeah, there you go. And they can be private boards. So nobody even knows what you're doing there if you're doing it under your business account or whatever. But it's so good, especially on your phone, for people that are like, oh, I don't even know what would I do with it? What do I need it for, et cetera, et cetera. So like, pick something like, for you, shoes, set up a little private board or a secret board, jump on your phone and start collecting things in there. And you'll really find it fun, like really, really fun. So maybe that's a challenge for the week. And then we can talk Pinterest next week.
I can do that. Having said that, I have used Pinterest with my clients when I'm asking them to send inspiration images that they want to use for their content when we're creating PDFs or when we're creating programs. I get them to send me Pinterest boards from their perspective, because that's what they use to show me who they want to show up as, and what does that theme look like, and what are the images that resonate with them. So I have used it from that perspective. I just kind of go, I don't know how to, but that's my challenge for the week. I love that.
Yay, me too.
And maybe for yours is to show up more than once on LinkedIn this week and have 3 posts on LinkedIn and just start to love it, and just think of it like thought bubbles. I think of LinkedIn as mini blogs to share with people how that you're good at what you do and elevate you in that business world. It's just to say, hello, I'm here. If you're looking for someone who can do this on a really professional level and elevates your business, that's what I like LinkedIn about, because for me, it's a slightly different bar. And there is still some kind of separation between, are you on Facebook or you're on LinkedIn? And it's completely, people are on both. So let's face it. People say, like, I'm only on LinkedIn. No, you're on Facebook too. You're just maybe not using it for your business, but you're on there, right? And if you got on a LinkedIn profile, like even Michael's created a LinkedIn profile because he knows as he starts to develop, as he grows, he needs to sort of show up a little bit. Now, he may not be posting very often, but he's there so people can find him there. It's also really good for SEO. I've discovered LinkedIn. Google loves LinkedIn. So if you've got a LinkedIn profile and someone types in something to do with your business name, LinkedIn is one of the first links that will come up if they're typing in your name or your business name.
That's so true. All social channels are good for that. So
yeah, very true.
Social channels for your business is crazy.
Very much so.
I still find businesses that have no website, no social media presence, and I'm like, do you even exist?
I was like, how do you even exist? Like, yeah. You need that at least. If you don't want to build a website, build a Google My Website. Go to Google and use the Google website, get a Google My Business, do it for free, set it up easily. At least then Google will start to love you a little bit more, and they'll actually start to show up when you do searches about you. So that's my tip for the day. If you don't want to be on social media, if you don't want to be online, just start with something really simple like Google My Business and a Google website for free, and get yourself out there, because it will make a massive difference to people being able to find you.
I'm 100% with you there, Jenni. Absolutely. So let's chat Pinterest next week. I look forward to that.
Thank you for that, chat. That's fun. So I think the tip that we have today is, if you have to be somewhere where you don't want to be, think about why you want to do it. Make sure you're doing it authentically, and find a way to actually do it that you enjoy, or that makes it fun for you. So if it's on your mobile, if it's on your desktop, if it's, organizing a conversation like this with someone, saying, hey, let's share some stories or some ideas because you don't want to be on YouTube, something like that. I think that's a really great tip. So find a way to use it for you that works best and fits into the way you like to work.
Yay. Love it. Now, how can people get in touch with you, Jenni?
Best way to find me on Instagram, as we just said, or Facebook on @ElephantInTheRoomAU. From there, you can find my LinkedIn profile, you can find websites, and you can connect directly with me. And Kylie, how about you?
Hellomedia.team, the website, the Instagram, YouTube. The only one that's different is Facebook, which is hellomedia.dreamteam. So I would love to connect with you. Join our Facebook group and hang out.
Yeah. And we will see you next week for a Pinterest discussion about why it's so good for your business and also just for fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got to enjoy it for fun first before and really just start investigating.
And I'll be showing you my Air Force One Pinterest board.
Yay! I look forward to it. All right. Have a wonderful week. Thanks.
Have a great week, Kylie. See you later. Bye everyone.